Good evening. Tonight, we bring you a story that is already sending shockwaves across the nation and stirring passionate conversations in homes, communities, and the halls of power. The Supreme Court has just delivered a landmark, unanimous decision, 9 justices in total agreement, upholding a federal law that permits the confiscation of certain firearms, but only under specific circumstances that require careful judicial review. This means that, in cases where there is credible evidence of imminent danger or threat, authorities may intervene, but only after a judge has thoroughly examined the facts. This rare 9-0 ruling has ignited fierce debate, touching the very core of American identity. At stake is the delicate balance between the cherished right to bear arms, a right deeply rooted in the nation's history, and the urgent need to protect public safety in an era marked by increasing concerns over gun violence. For some Americans, this decision represents a long-awaited step toward curbing gun violence and making communities safer. For others, it's seen as a dangerous overreach by the government, raising fears about the erosion of constitutional rights and personal freedoms. The decision's unanimity is striking and rare, signaling a level of strong legal reasoning and consensus that transcends the usual partisan lines. Legal scholars are already calling it a defining moment for the court, one that could set a precedent for years to come. Importantly, the ruling does not abolish the Second Amendment. Instead, it redefines its boundaries for the modern era, clarifying how constitutional rights can coexist with evolving public safety concerns. The court emphasized that responsible gun ownership remains protected, but with new safeguards in place. Across the country, both protests and celebrations are erupting. Law enforcement agencies and lawmakers are scrambling to interpret and implement the decision, while advocacy groups on both sides mobilize their supporters. Over the next hour, we'll break down what this historic ruling means for you, your family, your community, and the future of the nation. We'll hear from legal experts, community leaders, and everyday Americans as we unpack the implications. Let's begin by exploring the case that brought us to this pivotal and historic moment in American legal history. The landmark decision we're about to explore stems from the case of United States versus Miller Jr., a legal battle that has captured national attention and sparked heated debate across the country. This case began 3 years ago, winding its way through the courts as the legal landscape around gun rights and public safety continued to evolve. Robert Miller Jr., a law-abiding citizen with no prior criminal record, was flagged by a federal threat assessment. Authorities confiscated his semi-automatic rifle under the newly enacted Community Safety and Modern Firearm Regulation Act. This controversial law allowed for the removal of firearms based solely on perceived threats, even in the absence of a criminal conviction, raising serious questions about due process and individual rights. Miller, supported by prominent Second Amendment advocacy groups, challenged the law in court. He argued that the government's actions violated his constitutional rights, particularly the right to bear arms and the right to due process. The case quickly became a rallying point for both gun rights supporters and advocates of stricter gun control. Initially, the district court sided with Miller, agreeing that his rights had been infringed. However, the appellate court reversed this decision, emphasizing the government's compelling interest in preventing potential violence and highlighting the law's built-in judicial safeguards designed to protect against abuse. With conflicting rulings from lower courts and mounting public pressure, the Supreme Court was compelled to take up the case, recognizing its far-reaching implications for both public safety and constitutional freedoms. At the heart of the matter was a critical question: can the government lawfully confiscate firearms from individuals based solely on a civil threat assessment, without any criminal conviction or formal charges? The courtroom was charged with emotion as attorneys on both sides presented their arguments. The debate pitted the urgent need for public safety against the enduring protection of constitutional rights, with passionate advocates and protesters making their voices heard outside the courthouse. Across the nation, millions watched the proceedings unfold, fully aware that the outcome would not only impact Miller, but also redefine the boundaries of the right to bear arms in the 21st century. The Supreme Court's decision would set a powerful legal precedent, shaping the future of gun legislation and civil liberties for generations to come. To truly understand the significance of this case, let's take a step back and examine the broader history and context behind this ongoing national debate. Firearm confiscation debates date back to the nation's founding, but the modern conflict intensified after the Supreme Court's 2008 Heller decision, which affirmed an individual's right to own firearms for self-defense. Since then, the focus has shifted to how far that right extends, with states enacting red flag laws allowing temporary firearm removal from those deemed dangerous. These laws sparked legal challenges, creating a patchwork of rulings nationwide. United States versus Miller Jr. stands out because it involves a federal law and a broader threat assessment protocol, not just imminent threats reported by family or police. The Supreme Court wasn't just ruling on another red flag law, but on a new federal framework for confiscation. The justices had to weigh historical interpretations of the Second Amendment against modern realities of gun violence. Many expected a divided decision, but the result was unanimous. On January 12, 2026, the Supreme Court unanimously upheld the law, stating the Second Amendment is fundamental, but not absolute. The opinion compared this to limits on free speech, noting that rights can be restricted when a judicial review finds a credible threat. The law's safeguards, threat assessment, evidence before a judge, and the right to challenge were key to the court's approval. The ruling is narrow. It targets specific individuals and weapons, not the general public. A concurring justice wrote, "The right to bear arms was never intended to be a suicide pact for the nation. The decision does not ban firearms for law-abiding citizens, create a registry, or allow warrantless seizures. Instead, it authorizes targeted court-approved confiscation for those deemed a danger. This sets a powerful new precedent for future gun legislation. The law is now in effect nationwide, and federal agencies are resuming threat assessments and confiscations. Most gun owners won't be affected, but those flagged by the protocol face new legal risks. Gun rights groups are advising members on how to respond if targeted, while gun control advocates celebrate a major victory. The ruling energizes both sides. Gun control groups push for expansion, while gun rights supporters feel betrayed. Local law enforcement faces challenges, with some officials refusing to cooperate with federal agents, especially in conservative areas. This could lead to uneven enforcement and local federal conflicts. The practical rollout of this law will be complex and contentious. The nation is bracing for the next phase of this battle. The political fallout is immediate and intense. Republicans condemn the ruling, vowing to repeal or defund the law and making it a central campaign issue. Democrats celebrate the decision but must balance calls for stricter laws with concerns about alienating moderates. In swing states, firearm confiscation will dominate campaign ads and debates, forcing candidates to take clear positions. The ruling deepens the urban-rural divide and fuels talk of sanctuary counties, refusing to enforce federal gun laws. Both parties now have a potent, polarizing issue heading into the elections. The Supreme Court sought clarity, but instead, a new political firestorm has erupted. The nation's political landscape may never be the same. The economic impact was immediate. Firearm manufacturers' stocks plunged up to 30% after the ruling. The firearms industry, supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs, now faces uncertainty and potential layoffs, especially among small retailers. Some communities may suffer as major employers struggle or close. Meanwhile, companies specializing in gun safety technology and legal services may see new opportunities. The ruling signals a shift toward responsible gun ownership, attracting investment in safety innovations. Yet, uncertainty about future regulations could chill business and consumer spending. The full economic consequences will unfold over years as the nation adapts. Legal experts across the country are calling the recent Supreme Court ruling a masterclass in judicial minimalism, praising the court for its careful, measured approach. Rather than issuing a sweeping decision, the justices chose to address only the specific issues at hand, setting a precedent for future cases while leaving room for further debate and interpretation. Professor Anya Sharma, a constitutional law scholar, notes that the court built on the foundation laid by the Heller decision, but this time, it placed a strong emphasis on due process. By focusing on procedural fairness, the justices were able to reach a broader consensus, even among those with differing views on gun rights and public safety. David Chen, a prominent conservative legal scholar, describes the ruling as a bitter pill for gun rights advocates. He points out that the decision allows for the confiscation of firearms based on predicted risk rather than proven criminal acts, a significant shift in legal standards. Chen warns that this could set a precedent for future cases where individual rights are weighed against public safety concerns. Dr. Maria Flores, a leading sociologist, cautions that the law's fairness will ultimately depend on how judges interpret and apply it, as well as the resources available to courts and the potential for bias in threat assessments. She emphasizes that the human element, judicial discretion, implicit bias, and local resources will play a critical role in determining whether the law is applied justly. According to Dr. Flores, the real test of this ruling will unfold over the next decade as courts and communities adapt to the new legal landscape. She predicts that the law's impact will become clearer as more cases are decided and as data on its effectiveness and fairness accumulates. Retired Judge Michael Patterson highlights the court's central message: gun laws must be narrow, targeted, and always include robust due process protections. He stresses that the ruling sends a clear signal to lawmakers that any future regulations must be carefully crafted to withstand constitutional scrutiny. The Supreme Court's decision firmly rejects broad, sweeping bans, but it also opens the door to carefully designed, preventative measures that address specific risks. This nuanced approach encourages innovation in lawmaking while respecting individual rights. Across the legal community, experts agree, this decision does not end the ongoing debate over gun rights and public safety. Instead, it establishes a new framework and sets clear rules for lawmakers to follow as they craft future legislation. The next chapter in this evolving story will be written not only in the Supreme Court, but in legislatures and courtrooms across the country as states and local governments respond to the ruling and test its boundaries. Now, the nation must grapple with the law's real-world impact as communities, lawmakers, and citizens alike navigate the challenges and opportunities created by this landmark decision. America stands at a crossroads, united by a Supreme Court decision, but divided in response. The ruling is not an endpoint, but the start of a new chapter in the nation's relationship with firearms. Moving forward will require honest, respectful dialogue, not demonization or retreat into partisanship. The justices found consensus. Now, citizens must do the same. Stay informed, read the court's opinion, and engage in meaningful conversations with those who disagree. Attend town halls, contact your representatives, and make your voice heard, civilly and constructively. The future of the Second Amendment and public safety is being shaped right now by all of us. The responsibility for America's path forward rests not just with the court, but with every citizen. The work of building a safer, freer nation continues. Good night.